Hello, my name is Allie Davis, and in this video I'll be discussing both the positive and negative outcomes resulting from the transmission of cultural values in education. Throughout this video, I'll be integrating a key theme surrounding the purpose of education that touches upon the relationship between schooling and the cultural transmission of values. To support this theme, I'll examine how American schools transmit American values and further analyze the positive and negative effects resulting from the transmission of cultural values upon varying groups in the U.S. To begin, the Heart of a Nation documentary best defines the relationship between schools and the cultural transmission of values as a first institution outside of the home to shape children's behavior and social habits. This labels schools as a so-called heart of the nation, where children are taught the skills they will need to pass their society's bedrock values. But what are values? According to Arian Cox, values are standards by which people define what is good and bad and right and wrong. Values can differ depending on the society, though each value is upheld for the functioning of society. Thus, part of the purpose of education is to teach proper knowledge and values within a specific society. There are various ways in which schools transmit cultural values. In the Silence Dialogue, Lisa DePleat analyzes 5 rules of power that explicitly and implicitly influence the educational needs of Blacks and poor students. Pertinent to our understanding of how schools transmit cultural values is the first rule of power, in which issues of power are first enacted in the classroom. For example, the power of the teacher over the students, or the power of publishers of textbooks. In the article Democracy at Risk, writer Richard Newman highlights how schools are originally designed to transmit Anglo-Saxon cultural heritage. This was achieved by centering the class dynamic upon the teacher and the knowledge upon textbooks. From doing so, teachers are responsible to teach the material within the textbooks, and history textbooks often avoid examining the white supremacist superstructure of racism and glorify our nation's past. This is certainly a negative consequence resulting from the transmission of cultural values. Another way in which schools transmit cultural values is shaped by rewarding good behavior and punishing bad behavior, which furthermore sets forth classroom expectations. And lastly, each school are responsible for student outcomes by teaching students what will bring success. Each of these methods hone on to how the U.S. transmits values of achievement and individual development to demonstrate success, and furthermore teaches students how to function based on the American way of life. As a result, some would suggest this is a form of social integration and had recognized this as a positive outcome of cultural transmission of values. Positive because it combines members of separate groups into a unified society and implies a sense of coming together. Although many scholars question whose culture is being preserved by schools and whose is being eliminated. As mentioned previously, public schools in the U.S. are designed to appease the dominant group, which historically and today often replicate white middle-class parents. DePleat's research supports this, demonstrating children from middle-class homes tend to do better in school than those from non-middle-class homes because the culture of the school is based on the culture of the upper and middle classes, otherwise those in power. Thus, as the dominant culture perceives this to be a positive outcome of social integration, DePleat also suggests members of the dominant group are frequently least aware of this existence of power. While on the other hand, members not part of the dominant group may perceive this to be a form of forced assimilation into dominant practices. One of the most extreme cases of forced assimilation was exemplified when President Andrew Jackson made it mandatory for every Indian child to attend a boarding school. This policy of taking Indian children from their families reflected the ethos of colonialism and the feeling that whites' culture was superior to Native American culture. The main objective of this policy was to eliminate American Indian cultures and assimilate them into American society. However, this form of forced assimilation failed after many of these children left the boarding schools feeling as though they didn't fit in white mainstream society nor the tribal societies at home. Different from that of the Indian, assimilation can occur within a class lens. This was best exemplified by the Koreans and Stacey Lee's behind the model minority stereotype. By distinctively identifying as neither Asian or Asian Americans, members of the Korean student body have maintained a dual identity in which parents and immigrant communities promoted the adoption of American values at school and maintain the traditional values at home. This strategy is rather manipulated as accommodation without assimilation, because Koreans believe school success was necessary for social mobility and thereby must appease the middle class. However, in doing so, the Koreans have perpetuated a dangerous stereotype that many Asian Americans face today, recognized as the model minority. If you'd ever heard Asians are hardworking, super smart, and really good at math and science, this idea of the intelligent, well-behaved Asian American is well recognized as the model minority. From its conception, the model minority has been utilized to insult African Americans, Hispanics, and other communities of color within the United States to further denigrate other racial minorities. This myth is often supported in the realm of education to falsely suggest racism can be overcome and even achieve greater success than those in the dominant group. However, this is seen as a negative outcome because it does nothing to combat the culture of power found in the U.S. From this example, it is clear that forced assimilation is a direct negative consequence resulting from the transmission of cultural values and can further harm minorities from obtaining equal levels of education and success. In conclusion, schools serve to teach Americans how to be an American by valuing individualism, self-reliance, and diversity, but do so in varying ways. For members of the dominant culture, American values are often replicated in their homes and positively allows them to prepare for success in the workplace or to move forward into college. However, for members of the non-dominant group, learning how to be an American means sacrificing your cultural background in order to be successful in school at the very least, and assimilating into the dominant culture. As a result, American schools carry the enormous burden of social disintegration, with violence, drugs, and a society divided by class, race, and unequal opportunity. The cause is shattered communities, broken lives, and wasted resources, and schools focus on the college-bound and leave the majority to fend for themselves. These demonstrate both the positive and negative outcomes from the cultural transmission of values and the purpose of education. Thank you for watching.